When designing a Windows Server Active Directory infrastructure for a multinational corporation, which forest design would best support independent IT management across regional offices while maintaining centralized security policies? A. Single forest, multiple domains. B. Multiple forests with forest trusts. C. Single domain with multiple organizational units. D. Peer-to-peer workgroup configuration. An organization requires that all domain controllers authenticate users using Kerberos v5 protocol. What is the maximum lifetime you should configure for Kerberos ticket granting tickets, TGTs, to balance security and user experience? A. 2 hours. 10 hours. C. 24 hours. D. 7 days. 3. You are implementing a group policy object, GPO, to deploy software to 5,000 workstations. Which deployment method ensures the application installs only when a user attempts to open an associated file type? A. Assigned to computers. Assigned to users. C. Published to users. D. Published to computers. 4. You are implementing a Windows Server backup strategy for a critical database server. Which backup state flag indicates that a file has been modified since the last backup? A. Read-only attribute. B. Archive attribute. C. System attribute. D. Hidden attribute. 5. When configuring Active Directory sites and services, what is the primary purpose of defining site links and assigning costs to them? A. To improve user logon speeds. B. To control Active Directory replication traffic and optimize replication paths. C. To restrict user access to specific network locations. D. To configure DNS round-robin load balancing. 6. When implementing a certificate-based authentication solution, what is the maximum validity period recommended for an end entity leaf certificate according to industry best practices? 90 days. 1 year. C. D. 5 years. 7. An organization needs to ensure that all network communications between branch offices and headquarters are encrypted. Which Windows Server role should you implement? A. Network Policy Server, NPS. B. Routing and Remote Access Service with VPN. C. Direct Access. D. Web Application Proxy. 8. When designing a public key infrastructure, PKI, what is the primary reason for implementing an offline root certificate authority, CA? A. To reduce network bandwidth consumption. B. To improve certificate issuance performance. C. To enhance security by limiting root CA exposure. D. To comply with international standards. 9. You are troubleshooting slow logon times for users in a remote site. Which tool would best help you identify the group policy objects causing the delay? A. Event Viewer. B. Performance Monitor. C. Group Policy Results, Result. D. Network Monitor. 10. In a Hyper-V environment, what feature allows you to take snapshots of running virtual machines without causing downtime? A. Live Migration. B. Storage Migration. C. Virtual machine checkpoints. Replica. 11. When implementing Windows Server Update Services, WUS, which synchronization schedule best balances server load and update availability for a global organization? A. Synchronize every hour. B. Synchronize once daily during off-peak hours. C. Synchronize once weekly. D. Manual synchronization only. 12. You need to configure a file server to provide previous versions of files to users. Which Windows Server feature enables this functionality? A. File Server Resource Manager. B. Volume Shadow Copy Service. C. Distributed File System, DFS. Work folders. 13. What is the maximum number of virtual processors that can be assigned to a single Generation 2 virtual machine in Windows Server 2019 Hyper-V? A. 64. B. 128. C. 240. D. 512. 14. You are designing a disaster recovery strategy for a multi-site organization with domain controllers in 3 geographic locations. To ensure business continuity, what is the recommended minimum number of domain controllers that should hold all 5 flexible single master operations (FSMO) roles across the entire Active Directory forest? A. All 5 FSMO roles should be distributed evenly across all domain controllers in all sites. B. All 5 FSMO roles should be placed on a single highly available domain controller with a standby server ready for role seizure. C. The schema master and domain naming master should be on one server, while the RED master, PDC emulator, and infrastructure master should be distributed across different domain controllers. D. Each FSMO role should be placed on a separate dedicated domain controller to maximize availability. 15. You are implementing a disaster recovery solution for a critical SQL Server database. What is the primary advantage of using always-on availability groups over database mirroring? A. Lower hardware requirements. B. Support for multiple secondary replicas. C. Faster initial setup. No licensing costs. 16. In a Windows Server environment, which PowerShell commandlet would you use to create a new Active Directory organizational unit? A. New organizational unit. B. Add 8 organizational unit. C. 8 organizational unit. D. Set organizational unit. 17. When designing a branch office deployment using branch cache, which mode should you select if the branch office has a Windows server available to host cached content? A. Distributed cache mode. B. Hosted cache mode. C. Hybrid cache mode. D. Centralized cache mode. 18. You need to delegate the ability to reset user passwords for a specific organizational unit without granting full administrative rights. What is the most appropriate method? A. Add users to domain admins group. B. Use Active Directory delegation of control. C. Modify default domain policy. D. Grant local administrator rights. 19. What is the primary purpose of implementing Active Directory Federation Services, ADFS? A. To synchronize on-premises Active Directory with cloud services. B. To enable single sign-on across organizational boundaries. C. To replicate Active Directory data across domains. D. To manage mobile device access. 20. When configuring a Windows server as a DHCP server, what is the recommended lease duration for a network with primarily desktop computers that rarely move? A. 1 hour. B. 8 hours. C. 8 days. 30 days. 21. You are implementing BitLocker drive encryption across an enterprise. Which component must be present on computers to store encryption keys securely at the hardware level? A. Firmware. B. Trusted Platform Module, TPM. C. Secure Boot. D. Hardware Security Module, HSM. 22. When implementing a Windows Server solution that requires users to authenticate through multiple forests that do not have trust relationships established, which authentication mechanism would provide the most seamless user experience while maintaining security? A. Implementing Active Directory Federation services to establish claims-based authentication across forests. B. Creating explicit forest trusts between all forests and configuring selective authentication. C. Configuring each forest to use the same user account database through directory synchronization. D. Requiring users to maintain separate credentials for each forest and manually authenticate to each resource. 23. You are troubleshooting performance issues on a Hyper-V host server that is running multiple virtual machines. Performance Monitor shows that the host processor is consistently at high utilization, but the virtual machines report low processor usage. What is the most likely cause of this discrepancy? A. The virtual machines are configured with more virtual processors than the host has physical cores, causing processor scheduling conflicts. B. Integration services are not installed or outdated on the guest virtual machines, preventing accurate performance metric reporting. C. The host server is experiencing memory pressure, causing excessive paging and high processor utilization for memory management. D. The virtual machines are configured with dynamic memory, causing the hypervisor to constantly adjust memory allocation. 24. You need to implement a solution that allows users to access corporate resources from personal devices without joining those devices to the domain. Which technology should you implement? A. Join, Workplace Join, Access, D. Remote Desktop Gateway. 25. What is the minimum functional level required for an Active Directory domain to support fine-grained password policies? A. Windows Server 2003, B. Windows Server 2008, C. Windows Server 2012, D. Windows Server 2016. 26. When configuring Windows Server Backup, which backup type captures only the data that has changed since the last full backup and does not mark files as backed up? Full backup, B. Incremental backup, C. Differential backup, D. Copy backup. 27. You are implementing a storage spaces direct solution. What is the minimum number of servers required to create a fault-tolerant storage pool? A2 servers, B3 servers, 4 servers, D5 servers. 28. Which Windows Server feature allows you to create a namespace that aggregates multiple file shares from different servers into a single logical structure? A. File Server Resource Manager, B. Distributed File System FS namespace, C. Storage Replica. Work folders. 29. When designing a Windows Server storage solution for a database application that requires high input-output operations per second and low latency, which storage configuration would provide the best performance while maintaining fault tolerance? A. A single large volume using storage spaces with simple resiliency across multiple physical disks. B. Multiple solid-state drives configured in a mirrored volume with write-back caching enabled. C. A storage area network with multiple spindle hard drives using parity-based RAID for redundancy. D. Network-attached storage with file-level access using the server message block protocol.